I never thought a bus station could feel like the epicenter of my life, but here I was, scrolling through my emails in my sleek downtown office, silk blouse catching the morning light, and my phone buzzing insistently on the glass desk. The message popped up like a punch I didn't see coming. Remember when we left you at that random bus station? Let's see how you find your way home. A laugh escaped me, sharp and bitter, before I could stop it. My life looked perfect from the outside: promotions, a small but thriving art consultancy, weekends at the gallery with my friends. But that memory, that cruel joke from my parents, had never left me. It hovered, a ghost I tucked neatly behind smiles and confident nods. I pressed my thumb against the screen, staring at their names flashing, feeling the pulse in my wrist, the hum of the city outside my window, the faint aroma of coffee lingering in my office. How could anyone be that thoughtless, that careless? And yet, the irony wasn't lost on me. Those moments of abandonment had quietly carved the path to who I'd become. I took a deep breath, fingers brushing the smooth edge of my planner, and realized something. It was time to confront that past. Not with tears or anger, but with the quiet, unstoppable force of everything I had built on my own. They thought it was a joke, but I was about to turn the punchline into my power. I can still feel the cracked concrete beneath my sneakers, the cold wind whipping against my cheeks as I stared at the sea of buses, none of which looked familiar. I was 12, clutching the strap of my pink backpack, heart hammering like it would burst through my ribs. "It's just a joke, Emily. Let's see how you find your way home," my father had called over his shoulder, laughter in his voice like it was the most natural thing in the world. My mother's smile was tight, rehearsed, as if she hadn't noticed the panic rising in me. I remember my stomach dropping, the helpless twist of betrayal. How could the people who were supposed to protect me leave me here, in the middle of nowhere, and call it a game? I wandered the station, dodging tired commuters and impatient drivers, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my backpack. Every announcement over the PA system felt like a challenge, every stranger's glance a judgment. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Then I felt it, a small, comforting presence in the chaos. Grandma's words echoed in my memory. "Even when the world forgets you, Emily, you can carry yourself through anything. Keep your courage close, and it will guide you." She had given me a small silver locket that morning, something she said I could hold on to when I felt lost. I clutched it now, pressing it into my palm, letting the smooth metal remind me that I had a choice: panic or survival. I found the courage to ask a bus driver for directions, though my voice trembled and my cheeks burned. I remember the tight knot in my throat as I realized I was on my own, truly on my own, for the first time. Every step felt like walking across a tightrope, every moment a test of whether I would crumble or rise. By the time I reached a familiar street hours later, the sunset bleeding gold across the city, I made a silent promise to myself. No one would ever have that kind of power over me again. If my parents thought leaving me at a bus station would define me, they were wrong. That day, the seed of independence was planted, and the girl who had been abandoned was learning how to become unstoppable. After that day at the bus station, life felt like a series of tests I had no choice but to pass. I buried myself in schoolwork, art classes, and part-time jobs, anything that gave me control over something, anything I could claim as my own. Grandma's silver locket stayed close to my heart, a quiet reminder that courage wasn't loud. It was steady, persistent, and patient. By the time I was 18, I had scraped together enough to move into a small apartment downtown. The walls were bare, the furniture mismatched, and the rent barely affordable, but every inch was mine. I met Mrs. Langley, a seasoned art curator who noticed my passion for visual storytelling and refused to let me give up when self-doubt clawed at me. She taught me the business side of art, how to negotiate, how to network, and how to believe in my own vision. "Emily," she'd say, "talent is worthless if you don't own your power. Don't let anyone take it from you." The early years were brutal. I worked long hours, balancing freelance projects and temp jobs, often feeling invisible. There were nights I'd stare at the ceiling, locket in hand, wondering if I would ever escape the shadow of that cruel joke from my parents. And yet, every small win was a lifeline. The first client who trusted me with their gallery installation, the first exhibition that sold out, the first check that cleared without strings attached. Each success was a whisper to my younger self. You can survive. You can thrive. I learned to master the art of subtlety. My family never knew how far I'd come. They called occasionally, asking about college or job prospects, and I'd smile, offering vague updates. Everything's fine, I'd say, leaving out the truth about my growing gallery, my increasing clientele, the investments I was quietly building. I wasn't hiding out of spite. I was protecting the version of me that had clawed her way up from that bus station, unshakable and self-made. By my mid-20s, I had created a small but reputable consultancy, helping emerging artists navigate the complexities of the market. I rented a loft studio downtown, walls covered with canvases, the scent of turpentine and fresh paint filling the air. I thrived in a world I had built with my own hands, every decision a silent declaration that I would never be powerless again. Still, the memory of that bus station never left me. It was the shadow that pushed me, the quiet fire that made me relentless. Grandma's locket remained in my jewelry box, glinting like a secret talisman, reminder that the girl who had been abandoned was now the woman who could define her own destiny. And as I looked out my loft window at the city skyline, the thought that one day I would confront those who once thought me helpless brought a small, satisfying smile to my lips. The knock at my office door startled me more than I expected. I had spent years imagining this moment, rehearsing the words I would say, the calm I would exude, the shock I would witness on their faces. And now, here they were, my parents, standing in the doorway, looking just as smug and confident as they had the day they left me at that bus station. Only this time, the roles had shifted entirely. Emily, my mother asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and something else, nervousness, perhaps fear. My father's grin faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I gestured for them to come in, motioning toward the space I had built from the ground up. They froze the moment they stepped inside. The office was sleek, modern, every corner reflecting meticulous care. Expensive abstract paintings adorned the walls, each piece a testament to the artist's I represented. A gallery-quality lighting system highlighted a polished mahogany desk, behind which I sat, composed, calm, utterly unrecognizable from the timid child they had abandoned. My mother's eyes darted around the room, lingering on the stacks of documents on my desk, the framed articles praising my work, and the glossy brochure for my consultancy proudly displayed. My father's jaw tightened as he noticed the certificates and awards on the wall, recognition of countless achievements they hadn't bothered to witness. I leaned back in my chair, lacing my fingers over the silver locket I had tucked beneath my blouse, letting it glint faintly in the light. "You probably expected to find me struggling," I said, voice steady, soft but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Maybe hoping I'd be embarrassed, maybe thinking I'd beg for your attention or approval. I paused, letting the words sink in. Their eyes widened, the unspoken realization dawning on them. Nothing about this woman before them was fragile or dependent. "I run a successful art consultancy," I continued, letting my words linger. "I've worked with some of the most prominent emerging artists in the country. My team respects me. I own this office, this business, and the projects we manage. Every achievement you see here, I built from nothing, without your support, without your guidance, and certainly without your care." The silence that followed was deafening. My father opened his mouth, closed it again. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for a chair, sinking slowly into it. The disbelief, the shame, the tiny flickers of guilt, they were all there, mirrored on faces that had never once considered the magnitude of their neglect. I watched them take it all in. Every expensive print, every carefully curated book, every award plaque, each a testament to my resilience, my independence, my refusal to be defined by their cruelty. For years, they had left me at a random bus station as if my confusion and fear were a joke. Now, the punchline had changed. I smiled, a quiet, satisfied curve of my lips. I hope you understand, I said softly, that the girl you tried to abandon? She's no longer at your mercy. Their expressions froze, and I could feel the power shift in the room. This was no longer their stage, it was mine. And for the first time in years, I could enjoy watching them realize it. I let the silence stretch for a moment longer, watching my parents fumble through the unfamiliar territory of accountability. I could see the old patterns dying in their eyes, confusion, defensiveness, the instinct to dismiss me, but I wasn't going to let them off the hook. Not now. I'm willing to help, I said, my voice calm but firm. But it won't be on your terms. It will be on mine. And that means change, real, meaningful change. I leaned forward slightly, letting the weight of my gaze underscore every word. My mother swallowed hard. Change? What do you mean? I reached for my locket and touched it lightly, letting them see the silver gleam. This was my anchor when you left me at that bus station. It reminded me I could survive on my own. If you want to be part of my life again, you have to prove that you can be anchors for yourselves, not obstacles to me or anyone else. I laid out the conditions one by one. My father needed to confront his dismissiveness, the casual cruelty he passed off as humor, and demonstrate genuine empathy in his relationships. No more jokes at someone else's expense. He had to show accountability, not arrogance. My mother, who had perfected the art of quiet indifference, had to learn to listen without judgment, to support dreams rather than dismiss them, and to recognize when her actions caused harm. She needed to reclaim the compassion she once had but buried under self-interest. Both had to commit to self-growth, to pursue something meaningful, skills, passions, ambitions they had ignored for decades. They had to learn that respect isn't inherited, it's earned, just like trust. And most importantly, they had to understand that my success was not a bargaining chip or a threat. It was a fact. I could see the resistance in their eyes, the old reflexes, but I didn't flinch. I care about you both, I added, letting a hint of warmth soften my words. I always will, but I will not bend to the same patterns that left me stranded, alone, scared. I am not that 12-year-old girl anymore. And if you want a place in my life, you need to meet me here, strong, accountable, respectful. The room was quiet, heavy with tension and the weight of expectation. I could feel the power firmly in my hands, not as a weapon, but as a shield and a guide. This wasn't vengeance, it was transformation. The girl abandoned at a bus station had become the woman who sets terms, who defines relationships, who demands integrity. For the first time, I saw glimpses of their willingness, hesitant, shaky, but present. They weren't perfect, and they might never be, but this was the start of something different. I had set the boundaries, and for the first time in my life, I could breathe without fear of abandonment, without needing their approval. I had created the rules, and they would have to step into a new world if they wanted to be a part of it. And in that moment, I realized that power didn't come from wealth or recognition. It came from claiming yourself, from setting conditions that protect your worth, and from giving others the chance to rise alongside you or step aside. Months passed after I set my boundaries, and change, slow and uneven, began to take root. My parents showed up at my gallery openings, not to boast or interfere, but to quietly observe, offering small gestures of support instead of criticism. My father learned to listen before speaking, his humor softer, less cruel. My mother began volunteering at local art programs, using her talents to nurture rather than dismiss. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and that was enough. I often found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here, the long, lonely nights at my first tiny apartment, the countless moments when giving up felt easier than pressing forward. I thought of that bus station, of the cold concrete, and the panic that had made my chest ache, and I smiled. It wasn't the memory of humiliation I carried anymore, it was the memory of resilience. Every choice I made, every step I took toward independence, had been forged in the fire of that single, cruel moment. One evening, after the gallery had closed and the city lights shimmered across the skyline, I opened my jewelry box and held Grandma's silver locket. It had been there all along, quietly witnessing my evolution. I traced the delicate engraving, remembering her voice, her belief in me when the world seemed to have none. The locket wasn't just a symbol of survival anymore. It was proof of strength, of transformation, of the woman I had become. I realized then that the most important relationship I had cultivated was the one with myself. I no longer needed validation from those who had abandoned me, and yet I had found a way to offer them a second chance, without sacrificing my power. Compassion, yes. Weakness, never. Respect, always earned. As I looked out at the city, I felt a deep, satisfying calm settle over me. The girl left at a random bus station had grown into a woman who could stand tall, who could forgive without forgetting, and who could define the terms of every relationship in her life. I smiled, whispered under my breath, and let the words carry me into the quiet night. I am unshakable, unstoppable, and entirely my own. And for the first time in a lifetime, that truth felt complete.